Hello Star Wars fans, and welcome to episode 71 of Journey into Legends. Today we're going to be reading Star Wars Republic. Star Wars Republic ran from 2002 to 2006, and it is a continuation of the main Star Wars run from 1998, which we reviewed last episode. I am super excited to start this series. I've heard so many great things about this series, and it'll be great to finally get some Clone Wars era content. Anyways, without further ado, let's read and review. Alright, so our first arc is titled Honor and Duty, and this one was actually really good. This one follows Anakin, Obi-Wan, and a few Senate guards as they attempt to protect a senator from assassination attempts. First thing I wanted to mention was the senator, whose name is Simon Greyshade, is actually from the Marvel comics, so that was a really fantastic connection I noticed. Overall, I just really connected with this story, especially with the character of Seguro Autem, the main Senate guard. For some reason, I found his whole story really interesting and quite sad. His estrangement with his son, his loyalty to the Republic, and how that affects his relationships, his moral qualms about his brother, and him throwing it all away to protect his son from prosecution. I found that all really compelling and poignant. Anyways, let's move on to our next story. Alright, so issue 49 is called Sacrifice, and it follows Quinlan Vos and Aayla Secura as they discover a sinister separatist plot to attack the cloning facilities on Kamino. Overall, I actually really liked this issue. Like always, it's great to see Quinlan Vos once again, and it was also great to see the wheel from the original Marvel comics again. Anyways, let's move on to issue 50. Alright, so issue 50 is called The Defense of Kamino, and it is the biggest issue to date, celebrating 50 issues with a whopping 64 pages. And overall, I really liked some aspects of this story, and thought other aspects were a bit lacking. I really enjoyed all of the character work here, especially between Anakin and Obi-Wan. So far, I'm really enjoying the depiction of their relationship in these comics. It feels very reminiscent of Attack of the Clones, with some signs of the bond that they will eventually share come Revenge of the Sith. We're also introduced to Ep.71, who was great. Now for the things I wasn't a huge fan of. The action was a bit underwhelming. There was a bit of dogfighting and ground combat, and that was about it. Also, the end portion of this issue that focused almost entirely on some random Mon Calamarian commander for the Separatists was super random and added nothing to the story. Alright, so the next thing I read is the tie-in comic Jedi Mace Windu, and this one was really good. This one, of course, follows Mace Windu as he goes on a mission to negotiate with a group of dissident Jedi. And like I said, this was really good. It was great to see characters like Sora Bulk and Kay Crook, and what I believe to be Asajj Ventress's first comic appearance. What confuses me, though, is why this wasn't just a regular issue of Republic. Anyways, let's get back to the main series. Alright, so the next arc is called The New Face of War, and it follows Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Alpha-17 as they head to a moon of Naboo to investigate a missing Gungan colony. And it's there that they discover a dangerous new bioweapon. They also find Asajj Ventress and Dirge, and as somebody who grew up watching the old Clone Wars cartoon, it's great to see more of Dirge. I wasn't expecting him to show up. Anyways, this was a really fun arc. The action was great, Omadion was a fun setting, and I enjoyed how violent this was. Alright, so issue 53, which is called Blast Radius, continues the bioweapon threat from the previous arc, as Obi-Wan goes on a mission to find the antidote. His search brings him to a volcanic planet called Queta, where a group of Jedi has already assembled. While searching for the antidote, they are attacked by Asajj Ventress and Dirge, and everyone but Obi-Wan is killed. Overall, I really enjoyed this issue. Once again, it's great to see Dirge in action, and he was absolutely brutal in this issue. Also, the art was really great in this one. Alright, so next I read Jedi Shaak Ti, and I really enjoyed this issue. The Battle of Brental 4 was an interesting one, and I really loved the way Shaak Ti was characterized. It was also great to see Quinlan Vos again, as well as the main Senate guard from Honor and Duty, Seguro Otem. Although this one wasn't as good as Jedi Mace Windu, I still really enjoyed it. Alright, so issue 54 is titled Double Blind and brings us back to Nar Shaddaa as Quinlan Vos is hunted by the Jedi over suspicion that he's a double agent for Count Dooku, which ends up just being a ruse by the Jedi Council. Anyways, this was a really fun issue. It was cool to see Asian Kalar. He never really does anything besides getting skewered by Palpatine, so it was cool to see him in action for once. And of course, as always, Quinlan Vos is just a joy to read about. Anyways, let's move on to one of my most anticipated storylines. Alright, our next arc is called the Battle of Jabiim, and this was one of the arcs I was most excited to get into, and it didn't disappoint at all. This was one of the grittiest, darkest, most violent storylines in the EU so far. I absolutely loved the way that it portrayed the sheer brutality of the Clone Wars. Clones and Jedi were dying left and right, our villain Alto Stratus was absolutely brutal, and the Republic ended up losing at the end. Overall, this was just a fantastic series. The art was phenomenal, the action was intense, and the characters, especially Anakin, were super compelling. My only complaint is that it was hard at times to remember who all the minor Jedi characters were. I would have appreciated getting fully introduced to more of them throughout the previous arcs, but that's just a minor nitpick. Alright, so next I read Jedi Aayla Secura, and this one follows Aayla Secura, Thulm, the Dark Woman, and a few other Jedi as they go undercover to the planet Deveron to investigate a separatist base. I really enjoyed some aspects of this story. I thought all the flashbacks to Aayla's tutelage under Quinlan Vos were really interesting, and there were a lot of really great Jedi teachings, not just from Vos, but also from Thulm, the Dark Woman, and even Aayla herself. I also really enjoyed the return of Aurra Sing and her fight with Aayla Secura. But overall, this story just didn't grip me as much as I expected it to. I didn't really connect with any of the characters, and the plot was just a bit forgettable. Anyways, let's move on to our next story. Alright, so next I read Jedi Count Dooku, and this one follows Quinlan Vos as he infiltrates Dooku's cabal of Dark Jedi. And this one was a lot of fun. First off, the Dark Jedi got a lot of attention in this one, which I really enjoyed. It was cool to see Sora Bulk, Tol Skor, and the others in action. Secondly, I really enjoyed the ending to this comic, with Quinlan Vos fully succumbing to the dark side, killing his aunt, and joining Count Dooku. Now, I'm still not entirely convinced that this isn't some elaborate ruse by Vos. We'll just have to wait and see. And of course, I also loved getting more Count Dooku content. I've always thought he's such an interesting character with a lot of potential, so it's great to see him get his due. Alright, so issue 59 is called Enemy Lines and follows Anakin and Asherad Het during the Battle of Argonar. And this one was a phenomenal issue. Whoever decided to pair Anakin up with Asherad Het, a Tusken, so soon after Attack of the Clones is a genius. Their dynamic in just this one issue was fascinating, whether it was their discussions about growing up on Tatooine, Anakin confessing his slaughter of the Tuskens, Het showing his face for the first time ever, or Het not telling the other Jedi about Anakin killing the Tuskens. This whole issue was just made so entertaining by their interactions. And of course, everything else about this issue was on point as well. The writing, the action, and the art. Overall, this was one of my favorite issues so far. Alright, so issue 60 is titled Hate and Fear, and it follows Obi-Wan Kenobi and Alpha-17 as they set to escape Asajj Ventress's fortress after being captured during the Battle of Jabiim. And this one was a pretty good issue. There was great action throughout as Obi-Wan and Alpha escaped the fortress, and it was great to see some of Ventress's origin, fleshing her out and making her a far more interesting character. Anyways, let's move on to our next issue. Alright, next we have issue 61 titled Dead Ends, and this one gives us a good look at some of the politicking in the Senate, and it follows Bail Organa. First off, I really enjoyed getting to see the Clone Wars from the perspective of a senator and how the different battles affect the Senate. And secondly, it was great to see Valor return to the spotlight, and I thought that his death was very well handled. Anyways, let's move on to the next issue. Alright, our next issue is called No Man's Land, and it follows Obi-Wan and Alpha as they are hunted by pirates on Riflor. Overall, this issue had some great action and art, and I really liked Anakin and Ki-Adi-Mundi's dynamic as master and apprentice. I also really liked Anakin and Obi-Wan's reunion, of course after Obi-Wan was thought dead at the Battle of Jabiim. I like how this series is portraying the slow development of their relationship from Attack of the Clones to Revenge of the Sith, and how this whole Jabiim ordeal serves as a big step in that direction. Anyways, let's move on to issue 63. Alright, so issue 63 is titled Striking from the Shadows, and this one further explores Quinlan Voss's mission to infiltrate Count Dooku's inner circle. Overall, I wasn't a huge fan of this issue's story, as there just wasn't much going on. However, there were some smaller things that I really enjoyed, such as the visit to Korriban at the beginning, another appearance from Kay Crook, and the moment when Quinlan Voss is sent to kill who he thinks is the second Sith Lord, and it turns out to be Senator Viento. I thought that was a neat twist, since at first I thought Dooku had told Voss that Palpatine was the Sith Lord, which would have been a bit narratively problematic to say the least, but obviously that wasn't the case. Anyways, let's move on to issue 64. Alright, next we have issue 64, which is titled Bloodlines, and this one was surprisingly fantastic. So this issue basically follows the friendship between Palpatine and a Jedi named Ronar Kim from before the Phantom Menace up until Kim's death in the Clone Wars. And although I wasn't a huge fan of how the story was told in reverse order, continually jumping back with flashbacks, the actual content of this issue was great. It gives us a very unique look at the relationship between a Jedi and their biological family. It actually brings up the idea of testing the midichlorian count of the Republic's politicians, something fans have theorized about for years, and it shows us the lengths Palpatine will go to protect his identity and how sadistic he truly is with how quick he is to sacrifice Kim. It also gave us a look at Captain Paleon during the Clone Wars. Overall, this was such a great issue that explored some really fascinating themes. Alright, our next arc is called Show of Force, and it follows a group of Jedi consisting of Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, Agen Kolar, and Saesee Tiin as they take on a part of the Bounty Hunters Guild for placing bounties on Jedi. Overall, this was a pretty fun arc that felt like a story from the original Dark Horse run, which was nice. This arc was nothing special, but the action was fun, the art was good, and the story was pretty solid. Alright, so next I read Star Wars Jedi Yoda, the final issue of Star Wars Jedi, and I really enjoyed the story in this one. The planet of Thustra and its king Alaric were both very interesting, and I really enjoyed the discussions between Alaric and Yoda. I also thought Alaric's death was very well done. Honestly, my only problem with this issue was the art. As somebody who isn't a huge fan of anime, this art just wasn't for me. It felt very cheap and out of place, especially among the other issues of this series, as well as the Republic comics. This felt more like a bad Tales story, which is not a good thing. Anyways, let's move on to issue 67. Alright, so issue 67 is titled Forever Young and follows Anakin and Obi-Wan on a mission to the planet Zaja to destroy a separatist droid factory. With them is a Jedi Master named Tono, who sacrifices herself to destroy the factory, and this whole issue deals with Anakin's struggles with letting Master Tono sacrifice herself. And I found this storyline very poignant, especially after the Battle of Jabiim and all the young Jedi that Anakin saw get slaughtered there. I also really enjoy how this connects to Anakin's constant struggle with attachments. Overall, this was another really great issue that not only had a great portrayal of Anakin, but also did a great job of continuing him on his journey towards becoming a Jedi Knight. Alright, so issue 68 is titled Armor, and it follows Aayla Secura and Commander Bly during a mission to the planet Honoghr. And if that name sounds familiar, yes, that is the Noghri homeworld from the Thrawn trilogy. And this was some of the best continuity of the series thus far. We know from Dark Force Rising that Honoghr was devastated in a battle during the Clone Wars, and that it supported no plant life. And in this comic, we see that battle and the bioweapon that polluted the planet. Honestly, my only complaint was that the issue focused more on the Quinlan Vos storyline than actually showing the battle in depth. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, I love Quinlan Vos as a character, and his storyline is still very intriguing. I simply would have liked to see more of the Battle of Honoghr and the Noghri. But overall, this was still a very fun issue with great continuity, and I really enjoyed it. Alright, so our next arc is called Dreadnaughts of Rendili, and for being just 3 issues, this was such an eventful arc. First off, we have the actual Battle of Rendili, which was great. We had Anakin as a knight, some familiar faces from the Stark Hyperspace War, and we even had Jan Dodonna from A New Hope show up as a Republic officer. We also had a storyline about Quinlan Vos. His dynamic with Obi-Wan was great, as well as all of the action on the Titavian 4. And we saw Quinlan Vos finally return to the Jedi Order. Also, the end did hint that he may still be working for Count Dooku, but we'll just have to wait and see. And finally, by far my favorite part of this arc was the duel between Anakin and Asajj Ventress, which not only saw Anakin go full Vader and seemingly kill Ventress, but it also saw the origin of Anakin's scar. Once again, these comics are doing just a wonderful job of filling in all the gaps between episodes 2 and 3. But overall, this was such a fantastic arc full of great action, and like I said before, extremely dense and full of story. Alright, so next I read the 5-issue series Star Wars Obsession. Basically, this series takes place right after the Dreadnaughts of Rendili, and follows Obi-Wan as he goes on a witch hunt for Asajj Ventress. And this series was phenomenal. Like always, the portrayal of Obi-Wan and Anakin is extremely well done as we're transitioning into Revenge of the Sith territory. Secondly, I really enjoyed the way Durge's death was handled. His fight with Anakin was very intense, and launching him into his son is not only super badass, but also probably the only way to kill a Gendai. And everything on Boss Pity was great, including Grievous in action, the death of Adi Gallia, and everything involving Ventress. Overall, Obsession was full of great action, a faithful Obi-Wan and Anakin dynamic, and a terrific story. Alright, so next I read a short one-shot comic from Free Comic Book Day 2005 that takes place shortly after Obsession. And this one follows Obi-Wan and Anakin on a random mission to a random planet as they hope to ambush Count Dooku at his citadel. Anyways, this mission turns out to be a trap and the two manage to escape the planet. Overall, for being a free one-shot comic, this issue wasn't too bad. The action and the story were a bit lackluster, but once again, I really liked Anakin and Obi-Wan's dynamic and their discussions of what their lives would look like after the end of the Clone Wars. Alright, so the next arc is called Trackdown and continues the story of Quinlan Vos, Thulm, and Aayla Secura. And this arc almost acts as a prelude to our next arc, the Siege of Saleucami, as we get the return of Sora Bulk, as well as the unveiling of a new Morgulkai clone army on Saleucami. And yeah, I really enjoyed this arc. First off, I enjoyed the little flashback we got of how Thulm got his scar, and how Dooku turned Sora Bulk to the dark side. And I also really appreciated that the scene took place on Bakura. Really great continuity right there. We also saw Quinlan Vos pay a visit to Dexter Jetster, so that was great. And overall, this arc was just pretty fun. Some good action and art, and I liked how it developed the plot. Alright, so our next arc is called the Siege of Saleucami, and this one was another really fantastic arc. Easily the highlight of this arc for me was the almost overabundance of action. There was so much action in this arc, and it was all really impactful, really important action. Obviously, we're getting extremely close to Revenge of the Sith, so they're starting to tie up all the loose ends, and in this arc we saw the deaths of Oppo Rancisis, Sora Bulk, Tol Skor, and a few more characters. We also saw the culmination of Quinlan Vos's arc, at least until Order 66. Again, overall, This arc was simply fantastic and did a great job of continuing the road to Revenge of the Sith. Alright, so our next issue is titled Loyalties, and it is the first issue that takes place after the events of Revenge of the Sith. And this issue was just fantastic. First of all, it was great to see Seguro Autem again, and the twist at the end that the bounty hunter hunting him was his son was really unexpected and well done. Most of all, though, I really loved how this issue portrayed the transition between the Republic and the Empire. We see the Imperial Navy's reaction to Darth Vader, and seeing Vader so soon after Revenge of the Sith was really great. Alright, so our next arc is titled Into the Unknown, and it follows two different storylines, both about Jedi surviving in the galaxy right after Order 66. Now, what made this arc really interesting was that the characters featured in it go on to be major characters in the Dark Times series, so this arc can be seen as a sort of backdoor pilot for that series. But overall, I really enjoyed this arc. The characters of Kai Hudora and Das Janir were both very interesting, and I'm excited to see more of them when I eventually reach the Dark Times series. Anyways, let's move on to our final arc of Star Wars Republic. Alright, so our final arc is called The Hidden Enemy, and it gives us a closer look at the Battle of Kashyyyk. And this was a really fun arc with a lot of great action, as well as the return of Villy, which just brought a huge smile to my face. If I remember correctly, we haven't seen Villy since before the series was renamed to Republic, so suffice it to say it's been quite a while. But overall, I really enjoyed this arc. I loved its portrayal of Order 66, as well as how it concluded Quinlan Voss's storyline and the Republic series as a whole. And finally, because I read the 2005 Free Comic Book Day special, I also read the one from 2006, which was titled Routine Valor. And this one follows Commander Cody and the 212th during the Battle of Sarish, and this one was extremely short but also a lot of fun. Honestly, it was just cool to see Commander Cody in action, as he didn't really get much focus in the Republic comics. So overall, I absolutely loved these comics. This is definitely my favorite version of the Clone Wars. I thought the whole series did a great job of capturing the brutality of the war, and I thought it did a fantastic job of connecting Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, whether it was Anakin's journey from Padawan to Knight, the development of his relationship with Obi-Wan, the transition from Phase 1 to Phase 2 clones, and the different campaigns of the war leading to the Outer Rim sieges seen in Revenge of the Sith. Overall, this might just be my favorite piece of EU media I've read thus far. I really, really enjoyed it. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for my next video where I'll be reviewing the 4-issue comic series, Vader's Quest. See ya.